only.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Only.
Hello and welcome to Up Only TV. I'm Ledger, Cobie on the way. We've got Robert Leshner from Compound on the show. We're excited to have him. Robert, that wave will matter in just a second. First, let's go to uponly.tv/FTX. They're our partners for this and every episode of Up Only TV. Thank you to FTX for doing that, for being our partners. You can trade directly from one asset to another. It's easy right there on the FTX mobile app. Liquid, get yield on your tokens while you hold them. Up to 8%, up to $10,000, 5% beyond $10,000, and track your portfolio just like you've always known and loved with the FTX app. uponly.tv/FTX. Cobie, what's up?
Hi, mate. I like that you and Rob have color coordinated, and I had to join in by kind of color coordinating my hat as well.
Yeah, now we just got 3 different shades of red going on. It's good.
Yeah, because we're trying, because the podcast is cursed, so I think if we go all red, the market will go up, which is
you can actually
try to trick
or
it
down. We're not sure yet.
If people want to view the show notes, get the audio version, see how to subscribe, they can go to cursedpodcast.com and find everything they need.
Rob, welcome to the show. How are you doing today? It's been, I imagine, a rough 48 hours, 24 hours?
Like 18 hours, 16 hours. Yeah, it's been a rough 16 hours, but glad to be here. Not going to back down from a public appearance while things are on fire. So,
yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And we messaged Rob to be like, when the comp stuff started kicking off last night, to say, look, if you want to postpone it, push it back a week or whatever, let us know. And he was just like, no, fuck it. I've made a commitment. I'm doing it. So thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. I know Ledger does, because Ledger's a bit fanboy, but
I do. I like Compound, appreciate the work that you do. Can you tell us what else you do? Because you've got like a venture arm of your activity in life, and give us the intro to your life.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, the founder of the Compound Protocol and the CEO of Compound Labs, which built it. I'm on the show because I'm not an engineer. A lot of the engineers are hard at work writing Solidity right now. But my background is I was a software entrepreneur. I was an economist, sort of just like a math person. I am, I read a little Solidity. I don't write it. But, I consider myself still primarily the founder of Compound Labs. We've launched some other products lately, which have taken up a lot of my time. The first one's called Compound Treasury. If you're familiar with BlockFi or Coinbase Lend, which didn't launch, the product is similar. You put dollars in, you get an interest rate, dollars out. But behind the scenes, the entire thing is powered by the Compound Protocol and DeFi. And it's extremely transparent. So if you're using a centralized interest-bearing account, you have no idea where that yield comes from and what's happening. In this product, it's a single source of yield and it's super transparent. So spending a lot of time building Compound Treasury. It's been cool to see it launch a couple weeks ago. Outside of that, I'd say my primary hobby is investing, mostly into other early stage DeFi founders and projects. I invest through a fund called Robot Ventures with a good friend of mine, Tarun Chitra, who's the founder of a company called Gauntlet. They do a lot of economic modeling for protocols like Compound. And the two of us are, investors in pretty much everything that moves with a heartbeat that's semi-intelligent in DeFi early stage. And, aside from that, my last 2% of my time I reserve for chess and the opera. And that encapsulates my life.
playing chess at the opera sounds kind of stressful. Oh, he's got 1% each. You split them out.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't never played chess at the opera. That would really be pinnacle,
Is there a level of making it that you have to do first before you can truly do chess and opera as hobbies?
No. I've been into both long before I
long before crypto
vaguely made anything. So I've been an opera buff for 6 years now. before I even founded Compound. And, chess, anyone can play, it doesn't
What's
matter.
your elo?
What's that?
What's your chess elo?
It's growing. So on chess.com, I'm not great. I'll be the first one to admit, but I'm starting to take it more seriously. So on chess.com,
I won't know.
I'm like a 15, 20 type player. My goal is to get to
But it's up only.
Up only, correct, yeah. Started at the bottom, we go up,
All right, well, you're better than me at chess. I play a lot of chess, but my attention span is quite limited. So I find myself playing like 1 minute chess or 5 minute chess. Like 5 minute chess is like as long a game as I can play.
Yeah.
I play a lot of like bullet or whatever. All right, well, thank you for the intro. There's like tons of stuff to talk about, and I'd love to talk a lot about Robot. I'll maybe leave it a little bit later. But I've got a question about Tarun. Does he make as much sense as his tweets when you talk to him verbally? Or do you just like nod and go, yeah?
Much more so on Twitter, he doesn't dumb it down, okay? Because like, when it comes to just like writing things, like his brain is like constantly like analyzing, mathematical conjectures that we don't understand. And so on Twitter, he just assumes that everyone else has Google at their fingertips, so he'll be like, oh, like, don't you understand like the Heimlich-Markov principle and how it relates to that, token? And it's like, what? No, like no one, we're not going to Google it. Like, we're not part of that like in crowd. But in person, he assumes that people don't have Google like in their brain. And so like he dumbs it down for you. And it's much easier to understand him in real life because he keeps it extremely simple because he assumes everyone else is like, a Luddite. So
yeah, sometimes I read his tweets and I'm like, I really did have to Google every other word. Like that just looks like I know what the words are, but that construction, that sentence makes no sense. It's like, but I like following him. It makes me feel smart. I read it and sometimes I retweet them even though I don't know what they mean. But like, yeah, definitely retweet that one. People think I know what that means.
Yeah, I retweet the ones with pictures in them because they look good,
I retweet the ones that make the least sense. Like, yeah, that one. I'll retweet that. It'll make me look smart. All right. So as we get started, we've got to address, I guess, the elephant in the room in the rough last 18 hours or so. My understanding is there's a bug in the comptroller and random large amounts of comp are being issued to very old borrowers. So it's not something that people can exploit today, but people that borrowed long ago might just go have a look and claim some.
How long ago? 2020.
You could have been a borrower 2 days ago.
Oh, really?
And be eligible for this. Yeah, but there's a bug. So, what's really cool about Compound at this point is it's been running on its own in a decentralized fashion, and development is actually an open process. So just like, there's not a company that controls like the Bitcoin, repo at this point, there's not a company that controls the Compound repo and code base, and anyone can actually improve it. This is extremely powerful and also somewhat dangerous. And by somewhat, I mean like extremely dangerous. And it's an open development process and an open governance process. And so there was a change that was introduced that went live last night after a 7-day governance process. And this change updated the comp distribution mechanics. And the comp distribution mechanics are something that were built and launched in June of last year. It kickstarted what now is farming, but it was the process of just giving away comp, right? And there was this patch was actually designed to add functionality and to fix a known bug, a known very innocuous bug. And the idea was, right now the protocol distributes comp equally to the suppliers of liquidity and the borrowers of liquidity in a market. And this upgrade was designed to allow governance to change the ratio. So instead of it being 50% goes to suppliers and 50% goes to borrowers, for a given market, it could change. So if it's a collateral asset like Ether or Bitcoin, it's only the suppliers of the asset and the ones who are using as collateral get the comp, because you don't need to incentivize borrowing Ether, right? No one wants to do it except to stake it in Lido and get a better return. But you don't need to incentivize borrowing. So the idea was you could move the rewards entirely to the supply side, or for maybe a stable coin, 2/3 to the borrowing side and 1/3 to the supply side. So the goal was to add new functionality instead of like a naive distribution. And, this goes to the fact that building anything in smart contracts is extremely dangerous, even when it's been peer reviewed by, 5 different other developers and extremely smart people, and you've like written test coverage and like scenarios, and you've run it through the simulations. There's always the likelihood that there's an extreme edge case. And what's interesting about this bug is that for hours after it was disclosed and known, it took the community like hours to figure out even where the bug was and how it worked, with like pretty much every brain in DeFi like analyzing the code in real time, trying to find why it was doing what it was doing. So this was definitely like a real needle in a haystack one. I believe it was a MakerDAO engineer who found the root cause of it. It was like a greater than sign should have been greater than or equal to. But this like defied a lot of people's logic. And so what happened was, when this code went into effect, what started happening was users who had borrowed assets in markets that have no comp distribution, the like fallback and the default was not like you get 0, it was you get a large number. And so you had users who were like, they thought they were going to hit claim and get like 0.1 comp. It was like 10,000 comp tokens, just like showed up in their wallet. And this is kind of crazy because it's a huge amount of money going randomly to users based on historical actions. So like some users, have been, whether you're using it for years or you're a whale or you're a small user, just old addresses that were getting crazy amounts of comp. And, first thing, it's not coming from other users per se, it's coming from this like bucket of comp that's for user incentives. But this bucket of comp for user incentives is getting depleted. So the losers in this are future users of the protocol that don't exist yet. Those are the losers in this bug, and all of the governance participants. And, pretty much every user who uses Compound today, while their funds are 100% safe, there's no risk to supplied or borrowed assets or any positions. It's only affecting the comp distribution. It is extremely disheartening, and I do think all users suffer when the process breaks down and a bug can enter the process, because I think it jeopardizes both the protocol and the ecosystem that's been built up around the protocol and the world outside of DeFi that just looks at DeFi. So I think it's, there are losers that aren't monetary in this. I think it's a big problem, but, this is something that I hope is a big catalyst to bounce back stronger from. So, Compound V2, which is what is running today, was the result of finding like a relatively like unexploited innocuous bug in Compound V1, the community rallying around it and saying, all right, now that we've seen this, let's build something bigger, better, safer, more stable, more successful. And so, this sucks, but it's not the end of Compound. It hasn't lost any users' funds. And, I expect that the community is going to learn a lot from this and bounce back a lot stronger.
And there's a fixed threat profile because of the amount of comp that's in that comptroller address, right?
Yeah. And so, the worst case scenario is a bunch of comp that was reserved for future users is gone. It's never coming back. But, the system is relatively sound. It's a couple percent of the total supply of comp, which is a lot, especially when a couple percent has been market sold on, Binance. But it's bounded, right? It's a problem, but I think the worst is behind us.
How long were those incentives meant to go out? Like, how long was that meant to last for?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we did when we launched the comp token and the comp governance system is we put about, what was like a couple years of comp, like 4 years of comp into the system. And we put it into the system saying it's going to be 4 years based on a distribution rate. After that, the distribution rate was lowered by governance by a little bit. So it really stretched it from like 4 years to 5 years of comp distribution. And so you can think of this as a process in which like all the comp that slowed down is what had been built up. So there was a bucket that hadn't been distributed, but we originally thought it would be. And so it equals a couple months of comp. It's like, in aggregate, it's like 4 months of user distribution, which is a lot. I mean, it's really tragic that can't go to other users incentives to community developers, like bounties for the protocol and like good uses. It sucks that it's going to a couple, addresses that are not adding any value to the protocol, but at least it hasn't cost any user funds.
And is your approach to it that has just gone, like, you're not expecting people to return it, it's just like code is law?
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening, and you woke up with 1,000 comp, please send it back to the protocol. I think, the community and other users and your karma and the universe will thank you. Especially if you're doxxed. I would say please return comp to the protocol. You can send it directly to the reservoir contract. You can send it to the time lock. You can send it to the multi-sig. Send it back. But on the other hand,
to me as well, if you want. If you don't.
Yeah, you can send it.
I'll pass it back. I promise.
Yeah,
We'll just take 10% off. Stop.
Yeah, that's fine. If that's what it takes for you to like take it and send it back, great. Send it to Jordan first, right? At the end of the day, this is a decentralized protocol, and there's a lot of folks that believe that the only thing that matters is like the meat space and courts and contracts and social things. Like if this happened at a bank, a bank error in your favor, you can't keep it, right? Like there's people at your door, right, when that happens. Crypto's different. We're all as a society figuring out where the lines are and where the rules are. My view is, if it happened to me, I would return it, right? Maybe that's also because I don't need to keep a giant airdrop that doesn't belong to me. But it's one of these things that everyone's going to act differently. It's TBD, but we'll see where it goes. If you have received comp, I think a lot of people expect you to send it back.
So is it just going out on its own when it triggers that?
Yeah, a number of users. There's like a list of I'll say like 200 users. Like if they try to claim their comp, they get just radically way too much. They think they're earning like 0.1 comp, they get 10,000. And yeah, you're probably not on that list of like 200 addresses. But there's
Ledger,
a couple.
would you send it back, Ledger?
Yeah.
If it happened to you, if you check it now. Not now because you're on camera and you won't be able to hold it in. But would you send it back?
Yeah, I value
all of it,
relationships and reputation over the monetary
What if it's not
incentive.
doxed?
Huh?
What if you're not doxed? You got
it depends if I even knew it was a bug. Like, it's possible that someone has no idea.
You just get dropped 30 mil.
I don't know if it's
a bug.
30 million, but I do think it'd be conceivable to just not know anything about this news, but you use a protocol or have used it in the past and you see it pop in and you're like, well, that's the coolest thing ever. Let me immediately put that in my bank or liquidate it or whatever. And without knowing what happened, and you find out later. So I don't know.
What Ledger's saying is he would keep it. That's what he's saying. He's self-justifying keeping it. It's like, maybe I wouldn't realize, so I'd want to put it in my bank.
I value the relationships and the reputation more. So I think if I end up knowing Rob and other people working on Compound for a long time, I'll benefit more than whatever that airdrop is worth by doing the right thing up front.
Thank you, Ledger.
I think a fair resolution is like people send back like 90%. Like, did you see the Bitfinex bug with the where they sent a
the
$27
million transaction?
Yeah. And the guy who did it, they kept like $1 million or something, so maybe like 3%. I was like, yeah, I think that's fair enough. Like, did a very nice thing, sent it back, and they were doxxed and they would get kicked off Bitfinex and shit, which would be bad. But
yeah.
I agree. I think 10% is actually extremely fair. There was actually a user that is doxxed. There's actually a couple users that are doxxed that people have gotten in contact with and said like, hey, even if you send 90% of it back to the protocol and the users, I don't think anyone's going to mind. It's still better than acting selfishly and unethically. So if you're listening and you do have comp that showed up in your address, send 90% back, and I think people do you a savior.
So after I saw the news, one of the wallets that I track that I get notifications for, I saw that they received 80 or 100 comp or something like that, and I didn't at all think that maybe that was them essentially getting this airdropped comp. And I thought, oh, they're trying to short this. I hope they get squeezed. So like, I thought they were borrowing comp, in order to try to short it on the news. But now I'm curious which one. I'm going to have to go track down that address.
Yeah.
And then outside of, like resolution and stuff like that, I'd love to ask a little bit about the process, because you mentioned, these things get peer reviewed, and you mentioned like all hands on deck and like maker engineers and stuff helping out, trying to figure out where the bug is, which is actually something very, very beautiful about DeFi. Is when something goes wrong, all of a sudden that it doesn't matter where you work, it doesn't matter which protocol like you work for or you have allegiance with, everyone like reaches out and tries to help. I know Banteg has like solved like half the problems that have ever happened or whatever, just jumps across to help. I think that's really cool. But can you talk a little bit about the process of like what it's like for a change like this to be put in practice, and how many people's eyes it goes across first? Because I know there's a 7-day governance process to even change anything within comp. So like what actually needs to happen for a change like this from proposal, I guess, to implementation, being in production?
Yeah, it varies. So in this one in particular, you can actually see like some of the process on the proposal itself. If you go to compound.finance/governance/proposals/62, the person who wrote about it sort of like included, a lot of context for it. Credits for all the participants in it. This proposal had probably about 6 people looking at it, including 2 members of Compound Labs, just as community members. There was simulations run on the proposal to ensure that it did things correctly. Now, obviously simulations, are bounded by what you're simulating. And if you don't know to look for something, it's possible you miss it. But there was test coverage, there were simulations, there was, multiple PRs that, were peer reviewed by the community. Some of the people voting for the proposal, like Gauntlet, reviewed the code. A lot of work went into this, and a lot of review went into this. And it wasn't enough. So this is one that, used probably about like 7 eyeballs in the community, like reading through the code, debating it, analyzing it. And there was an error. A lot of these are highly skilled, developers, and it was inadequate. I think, one of the reasons why this wasn't, more audited is because it didn't touch the flow of other funds, like actual like tokens. Any code that changes the core functionality of the protocol, like has 10 times as rigorous tests, and I don't think anyone's changed this in a long time. There is one proposal being developed by community members right now that's in like an 8-week audit because it's changing some of the core functions of the protocol. But it's one of these things where like the standards are going to increase because of this. So how does that happen in a DAO? Because like you've got this 7-day governance process, and you can't just turn up and go, "We're changing everything today. These are your new processes." What does it look like? How does those new best practices get adopted, and how do things change? Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think a lot of this is sort of like being discovered in real time by like a community. So I think it starts with the voters, right? It's like, I think at first it's like the governance participants need to not vote for things that don't meet an even higher standard and threshold. Because, that's the first line of defense is people saying, I'm only going to like vote for code that, the community all collectively believes is safe. And this is one that, honestly, the community believed was safe, but the standards weren't high enough. So if the community increases its own standards and says, hey, we're not going to, follow the same process, like we're going to require, even more sign off, even more process before we, submit it for approval. It's one of those things that I think will trickle down to voters. The governance process, and this is like the best and worst part of like a protocol, is that it's not actually like standardized or enforced by any one person or team. It's not run by Compound. We're actually far more powerless than most of the voters in the community. And so, I think what's going to happen is like, I know I'm going to vote against anything that doesn't meet an extremely high bar going forward. I'm going to encourage others to. When you have a protocol, like the best part about Compound, and I would say for the last couple of years, is that it's 100% reliable. And I think in order to meet that reliability standard, which, I think like the gold standard is Bitcoin, of like everyone knows it's simple and therefore it works. Like Compound is designed to be a simple protocol and a simple system that just works, and changes need to go slower. Changes can't be, a 1 month process. Like changes need to be a much longer, much more deliberate, much like more documented and rationed process.
So your mantra is probably not like test and prod or something like that.
It's never been tested, right?
Move fast and break things, mate.
Like this is the first what I would say is like solidity bug of the protocol,
which is pretty incredible in its own right.
Yeah, it's scary, right? And like I am, saddened and disheartened and shocked that this happened at all, because the track record has been impeccable up until now, and my mantra is never again. And I don't control the process. I will, as an individual, do whatever I can to make sure that the process is safer going forward. But I can only do that by sort of like pushing the DAO and like the community to prioritize safety a little bit higher.
This is inspired by one of the questions from the chat, but is it possible via governance to essentially create a rollback trigger, or do you think that's the right way to go about it? Like if you have a rollback trigger, does it incentivize you to, not be patient enough in the way that you roll things out in the first place, or are there other risks in having some kind of trigger like that?
No, it's a really interesting question. If you have a rollback trigger, you might be less incentivized to write safe code, knowing that you can like very quickly reverse something, right? Like, the entire governance process was designed for a mature system. A mature system being one that you're not going to let bugs enter, and one that doesn't require constant iteration, right? An earlier DeFi protocol, like you don't want a governance system like Compound that's very slow and very rigid by design. You want something where you can make changes quickly. The entire approach to like this 7-day process to change any of the code in Compound is designed to give people a lot of confidence that you're not rushing anything. And so if you have a rollback, that is the ability to change things quickly. And it introduces a different type of risk. And I do think that the standards might decrease if you know that you can roll things back. And I do think a lot of the bugs that you might create are ones that doesn't matter if you roll something, you undo a new piece of code, the damage has been done. Like in the case of this protocol, issue, if we rolled it back to how the code worked a day ago, you'd still have all of this comp that was lost. It wouldn't have changed anything. Right? I think most bugs and protocols are the same way. It happens, it's irreversible, it's an oh shit moment. I think we're extremely lucky that this happened in a, system that didn't jeopardize users' funds, it jeopardized the incentive tokens. But I do think that triggers are an interesting proposition. I think the more interesting proposition are what are sort of like triggers to change the process in other ways, which is like, what if instead of having a rollback, and this was an idea I think from Kane at Synthetics, you just had a process where if everybody agrees to do something, you don't have to wait 7 days, right? Compound governance is designed to be extremely slow and extremely deliberate. And, yesterday, the community rolled out a patch to just turn off the ability to claim comp. Everyone in the world would have agreed that was the correct decision. It'd have 100% support. We should have had the tools to be able to implement that immediately instead of waiting now for another 6.5 days for this to take effect.
Yeah, so you have emergency proposals basically that can have a 12-hour governance period instead of 7-day.
Exactly. Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah,
I think that makes sense. The only people that would have been voting no would have been the people that claimed they would have been voting your quorum. Like, no, we're voting no. We might have more somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of
that makes sense. You Sorry, Ledger, after you.
I was just going to make a bad comparison to traditional governing where you can have like a filibuster proof majority, so you have like a simple majority or like a big majority for overruling in certain circumstances. So yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense from a governing perspective to kind of have two thresholds for timing.
Oh, without a doubt. When we launched the compound governance system, a lot of people don't even remember this or know this, but one of the things that we did was because we wrote a governance system from scratch, and a lot of the Ethereum community is using the compound governance contracts, both on Ethereum and on forks and L2s and things. But the compound governance contracts are kind of like one of the standards and like foundations for a lot of DeFi protocols. So this was extremely experimental when we wrote it. We said, based on a lot of research we did of other on-chain governance, we looked at the small number of things that even existed at the time. How would we design a system? If I had to design it from scratch today, I would have actually designed it differently than we built with the best of our knowledge and launched in March of 2020. So we actually launched it 3 months before we began distributing comp to users. And when we launched, because we're like, hey, we have no idea if these parameters, these rules, these processes are correct, let's test it on-chain in prod with a limited token holder community before rolling out comp to all users and like just pulling the ripcord and like letting it work. And it's because we had no idea if the decisions, which were highly educated guesses, were the correct decisions in designing it. If I designed compound governance today, it would be different, right? We would have probably like emergency overrides if like the entire community agrees and things like this that we didn't plan for.
You mentioned when you were talking about, your power within Compound that you and Compound Labs, I guess, have limited power now. And as a topic I find interesting, I guess you're talking about like voting power and like your ability to enact change. Like you could vote no on stuff and it could still pass if, A16Z or whoever, I don't know, but all voted yes and, other funds and community members all voted yes. How much power do you think you have politically, like non-chain power, more like I like founded this shit and like I got Compound in my bio and how much power do you think there is in that? Because when like it's something I think about quite often is how much power does like Vitalik still have in ETH? If Vitalik went kill rollups, we're not doing that anymore, we're going this way, would there be change in the direction of ETH? And a similar question to you, like how much power, how many of those people that invested in Compound and will have had early conversations with you or like follow you on Twitter or whatever would listen to you saying please vote against this and then change their mind?
I'm going to go with medium power. And I say medium because I've been on the losing side of a couple governance proposals, like in compound governance history, where a great one is like there was a proposal to lower the WBTC collateral factor. Like it's not going to be as useful collateral. And I was like extremely against this. And it didn't matter. Like like all of the voters were like, no, like ignore you. Like you don't know what you're talking about. Like we want to lower it. And it was extremely contentious and I was on the losing side of it. And, I was not able, like, even with me like pounding the table saying like, don't do this, like wrong decision. Like people made a different decision, right? But I say medium because like, there's a lot of things where like, if I'm like, hey, like I'm excited for this, like everyone's like, okay, great. Like I'm excited for this too. So I don't know, it's somewhere in the middle. Like I think what's interesting is like, I think I have almost as much sway in like other governance communities as I do in Compound, which is like the weird thing. And like, I've in some ways made almost like as much of like, vote impact decisions in like Uniswap governance and the small number of Uniswap proposals they've had as I do in Compound, where like I've come out like, strongly for something or strongly against something, and like the community has rallied around that. And so I don't know, like I think there is a soft power to being a DeFi founder where, people take your views seriously because you've lived through shit and you've breathed it and like, how things work. But I don't think it's like, I don't think you get like carte blanche. I don't think people say, oh, if Robert says it, then like we have to do it. It's like, it just adds like a couple credibility points. And sometimes it makes all the difference and sometimes no one gives a shit.
I think that's extremely healthy though, because you don't want it to be like a puppet governance, because otherwise what's the point of designing the whole governance system? And you would expect the founder's power to essentially reduce, I don't know, maybe somewhat linearly over time as it becomes more and more distributed governance wise. Tokens get in the hands of more and more people and the governance system itself evolves. And at the same time, it totally makes sense to me that other communities, especially the ones that like look up to the way Compound has done things, be like, oh, look, Rob's talking to us about something. And it's almost like they kind of give you more clout in a way than like your own family. Like your own family sometimes be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's a natural progression as well as a protocol.
Ledger revealing a little bit about family life there.
No, that's just all my relationships, Cobie. Pretty much nobody believes I know what I'm talking about.
That makes sense. That's super interesting. I'd love to shift a little bit. And you mentioned you released a new product relatively recently, which is similar to BlockFi and similar to Coinbase Lend, which never launched, called Compound Treasury.
Yep.
Now, I guess it's kind of a hot topic at the moment, but Coinbase came out and said we want to do this thing. The SEC told us no, we can't do this thing. They won't tell us why. We're taking a stand. Then 4 days later, when we're not relaunching our products though. We're taking a stand, but not now. It's like, and then you've launched a product that's relatively similar. BlockFi I don't really understand what's happening with BlockFi, but it seems like Texas and New Jersey are not happy with them or something.
And Alabama.
Alabama? That was your
like,
doing.
We're standing up against BlockFi because why not? New Jersey did, so we should do it too. I don't.
And then there was at mainnet. Apparently, someone got subpoenaed in real life and stuff. So like the regulation stuff's ramping up, and an increase in anti-crypto narrative has happened, particularly from Lizzie Warren and other politicians. How do you reason about these things, generally at a high level, and then how does Coinbase not launching Lend impact the launch of Treasury?
Yeah, there's a lot here. So, start by, pulling up compound.finance/treasury and scrolling to the bottom.
Go on, Ledger. Now's your moment.
Yeah, this is
how smooth you are.
I'm typing furiously.
Yeah, compound.finance/treasury.
Trying to make sure I know how to spell the word treasury. Okay.
So then, it's a great website, but if you go to the bottom, how the small text at the bottom, this is even lower. Yeah. Okay.
This stuff. I didn't know people read that stuff.
Right. The boilerplate, legal section of every finance product, and every fintech product. So this is what makes Compound Treasury interesting in my mind, is that, it is being offered as a security very clearly and very directly. And we're actually taking the opinion that Compound Treasury is, without a doubt, a security. And we're offering it in compliance with US securities laws very deliberately. We're making a very strong effort for this product to do it in a way that embraces what some people see as very negative, ideas from the SEC. We're offering this product in a way that actually agrees with them. And, Coinbase Lend didn't launch because the SEC said an interest-bearing account offered by a company is a security. And they didn't want to register it as such. And our view is that, and this is a nuanced view, and regulations are always a complex topic, but when an interest-bearing account is offered by a company, where you're relying on that company not to steal all your money, it's a security. If the interest comes from their discretion and their judgment and their skills, it's a security. If an interest rate is offered by a decentralized protocol that operates autonomously and there are no humans and there's 100% transparency and there's no one that can and will screw you over, then it's not a security. And I think this is an incredibly important distinction and one that regulators are learning about. They're learning about the difference between a DeFi protocol and a business. You wouldn't believe how many folks out there think that there isn't a difference because they haven't even learned what a smart contract is yet. They just say, oh, anything that does anything is a company, right? But we have a very specific view that, an interest rate offered by a corporation is a security, and one that's created by a smart contract that runs autonomously without any management or intervention is not. And so that's what we view as the sort of legal foundation for compound treasury, why we're offering it, why we're happy to offer it. We're registering it with the SEC in all the states that we operate in. And we're doing it in a way where, we sort of acknowledge there's a difference between types of products.
I think that's super smart. Because this is still leveraging Compound internally, right? So my brother is an accountant, is a corporate controller, so he can I legitimately, they have to manage a lot of cash, and I was like, you could earn 4% on this in DeFi, and he was like, you're freaking psycho. And and I sent him this as an example, and I think it's really smart for companies that are worried about that, where they want to deal with more of a white glove situation. It's very above board. They know it's a security. They're able to do that, but they earn 4% on their dollars, not 0.1%.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the premise for this, right?
Yeah, that's the premise. And I think eventually you're going to see folks like BlockFi and Coinbase probably register their products as security. They're going to have to publish a lot more information about them. But honestly, it's not the end of the world, right? If you're a business, they have lots of lawyers and compliance people. They can publish a prospectus. It's not that hard. Everyone on Wall Street publishes a prospectus,
How do these manage insurance or loss of funds in a DeFi protocol, that kind of stuff? What happens if, everything goes wrong?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now it's, the program is being offered as a liability and obligation of the issuer, which is Compound Prime, which is a subsidiary of Compound Labs. It's basically Compound Labs is on the other end and on the hook. Gotcha. This is, something that I think we want to improve over time. I think there's a huge appetite to get offline insurance for this product. But that's something that's probably going to take another 12 months in order to achieve. But this is something I'm excited about. I think eventually you're going to be able to interact with a product like Compound. It's going to be, rated by rating agencies. It's going to be insured by insurance companies. And you're going to have fintechs and neobanks and Wall Street and all these people using DeFi and saying oh no, we love DeFi. After all the insurance costs and all this stuff, I'm earning 3.9%. Yes. I think that's what's going to be required for boomers to just love and embrace DeFi.
Can you make one that's Pool 2?
Compound Treasury Psycho.
Yeah, that's what I want. Give me the 20% yield. What do you put the money to get that?
Ledger, I really like the idea that you as a degenerate brother, you out of your family, you're the one that's the psycho one. And your brother's Ledger's really good, losing his way. I love that idea. That's so good.
It's very true.
Did I remember Compound was launching its own layer 1 chain? Do I remember reading this correctly? I think I wrote a paper or something about validators.
Yeah, so this is still in development. This is going slower than I would have hoped. So this is the other thing that Compound Labs is working on. So, when we rolled out, the Comp token and governance the community, in a lot of ways, this created a sort of fork in the road where we said, okay, we're now going to go out and do new things, and the community is going to have the opportunity to manage the protocol. And there's two things that we've been doing, since decentralizing Compound. One is Compound Treasury. This launched a couple weeks ago. The product's live. It's awesome. Like, I love this thing. The other one is Gateway, which is like the white paper was called Compound Chain, really lame, generic name for this. But the idea of it is that it's a layer one that acts as like a series of bridges to other blockchains. And in the center of all these other bridges is like a very simple application specific layer one that looks and feels and acts like Compound that you've used and know on Ethereum. So the basic premise of it is that it's a series of bridges, a bridge to Polkadot, a bridge to Ethereum, a bridge to Optimism, a bridge to Solana, a bridge to whatever. And you can basically import assets from all these other L1s and use them as collateral to borrow assets on other L1s. And so it's an incredibly complex technical undertaking, but the basic premise is really cool. It's, if I have Ether on Ethereum, I can borrow, dots on Polkadot, or I can borrow USD coin on Solana with my Ether on Ethereum. And it can create, a means of traversing between blockchains that's not like trading or like, creating some like shadow asset on another blockchain or wrapping it. Or like, the idea is you can trustlessly borrow an asset on another blockchain, like the native asset, using a native asset on some other blockchain. And that's the goal. It's in development. It's on testnet right now. During the testnet process, we found all sorts of, technical challenges, and we're not releasing Compound Gateway until it meets the sort of like security and safety, thresholds that we demand, especially if Compound Labs is building it. And so it's not ready yet. It's in active development. We've been grinding away at it for, the better part of the year at this point. And it's on testnet, and it's constantly improving on testnet. The whole thing is open source. There's validators participating. This is something that I hope comes soon. It's taking longer than I would have imagined, but.
How long ago did y'all come up with this as a potential product?
I think, we've released the white paper for it, I think in like December of last year. It's something that we've been like ideating on and designing and whiteboarding probably for like 3 months before that. So it was probably around September of last year we started. So it's been about 12 months.
Yeah, it seems like we went from this not being a real problem set to everyone agreeing it was a huge problem set within a very short amount of time.
Yeah, when we released the white paper for this, we were like ridiculed by a lot of folks in like crypto that were like, cross chain, like what are you smoking? Like,
you'll never need to get off ETH layer 1.
Yeah, like you never need to get off ETH layer 1, and if you do, there's going to be other ways to like do it. And like I think the pain point is starting to come into focus for a lot of people. And so like
here's a $32 approval. That really helps the pain be felt pretty quickly.
Are you trading while we're talking?
No, I can try. I can look. I can see.
You're approving while we.
Yeah, I did make some transactions earlier today, and it's a big difference when you're like making a transaction on a layer 2 or a sidechain or whatever, alternate layer 1, and then you get back on Ethereum and you're like, man, I like the security of Ethereum, but I do not like those fees. Like they're just rough.
They're brutal. I mean, they're unusable for a lot of users, right? They're unusable for people who are not like crypto rich, which I think is like 95% of users, to be honest. It used to be extremely affordable back when Ether was $300 and like you were spending like 3 GWay, using Compound cost you like 30 cents. That's reasonable. It's still way too expensive, right? But if you had $1,000, you could like very reasonably expect to use Uniswap and Compound and not just get eaten alive. If you have $1,000, you can't use Uniswap or Compound or really any application on Ethereum for any use case whatsoever. If you're paying $80 to do a transaction, 30 to approve it, and 80 to press the button, like Ethereum is absolutely like unequivocally like not usable for you.
Yeah, you'd have to leave it there for a decade to make up the fee.
Yeah.
Can I ask, do people say G-Way? Is that what people
I like
say?
it. I feel like it needs to be a standard because
What do you say, Gway?
Gway.
Gway,
is what
yeah.
I said, but I like
I say
G-Way.
G-Way.
G-Way?
I'm going
I've
G-Way.
never heard that before in my life.
Yeah, because it's Gigaway.
G-Way. I like
Yeah,
it.
G-Way.
Going G-Way.
The whole Compound Labs crew calls it G-Way.
Listen, Hasu missed a really good opportunity last week to rename MEV. And Rob's like, it's G-Way, you know? Like,
Yes,
it's just
G-Way.
power move. Just it's
G-Way,
G-Way.
look. I like G-Way now. I'm going with it. It's the
G-Way.
G-Way.
G-Way forever.
Yeah, G-Way is the way you're supposed to call it.
How do you think the Ethereum scaling issues are going to be addressed, or what are you most, no pun intended, optimistic about in the potential paths to fixing Ethereum's lack of usability for non-millionaires?
Yeah. I mean, I'm most excited about, F2. I honestly think that that's, fundamentally something that.
Wait, you say F? Like, G-Way's definitely wrong.
Yeah, I do. I say F, not ETH. Just like it's, like it's this token symbol. Like, all right, we'll come back to that later. But yeah, it is Ethereum. I think Ethereum 2.0 is actually most promising and most interesting because in some ways it negates the need for layer twos if it's successful. And I think, as a layer one that's more scalable and has higher throughput and has the same like security guarantees, I do think it removes like some of the reasons why Optimism and Arbitrum are so awesome today. And I say this in full disclosure, I'm an investor in Optimism. I think both Optimism and Arbitrum are amazing. I do think there's a risk that the use case is incredibly strong right now, but it goes away in 3 years. And I think there's still a lot of unknowns with F 2.0. But I do think when done correctly, I actually think that it's the correct solution. I think in the short term, L2s are amazing. I think EVM forks are also amazing in order to like just move users somewhere else. I mean, it's ironic, but it's also MEV forks. But like, I think that those are like shitty solutions. It's like, oh, Ethereum is too expensive. Just like deploy it on Binance, or deploy a shitty fork of it on Binance. You pay lower costs, and like it's fine. Like it's the same Solidity, right? You're like literally like, the smart contracts do the same thing. Like the security guarantees of the blockchain are not the same, but like so far, no one's really gotten protocol level rugged, right?
I wish they would have called it Ethereum.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah. Beth.
Yeah. Come on, Beth.
Yeah, Beth would be cool. But like, I think those are like really just short-term solutions. And it fragments and fractures users and UX and liquidity and assets. There's no composability between like EVM clones today. Like it's horrible. Like I think it like makes the entire ecosystem worse, but I can see like why they exist because like it's in everybody's like game theory benefit to like make their own thing. And so like there's going to be lots of them and like you're constantly going to see new like EVM clones popping up in other places too. But the magic of Ethereum is the composability of it. The fact that like Compound and MakerDAO and Uniswap can all exist on the same chain and add value to each other. And like, there's like a force multiplier there where every product gets better based on having more of them, that the more this fractures out into like 19 different like EVM forks, the less composable everything is and the worse it is. Now, the counter argument in my mind is that, oh, we're going to build a million bridges between them. So like whatever, like you'll have composability between, Donkey Trader on Binance and, MakerDAO on Ethereum. But like it doesn't actually exist yet. Like the composability is still like you have to bridge assets. There's not atomic composability where I can't press a button on one and instantly, have it do something with something on another EVM fork. And so like the composability of it sucks. And I think we're headed down a dark path. My biggest fear for Eth2 is that the composability of like shards sucks too. And it just feels like having 1,000 EVM forks again. And like the dark dystopia that we're headed towards is what like Eth2 becomes, where it's like, oh, like you have this one place where like Compound and Uniswap are, and on that other one is Donkey Trader, and Donkey Trader is super hot. So like you got to bridge from one to the other to like, you know, move your assets onto that one. And like the composability is worse.
Is it possible with ETH 2.0 that it's like that, where you say like, oh, well, you know, you should have sent that to Shard 42 or something? Is that a realistic outcome?
No one goes to Shard 42, mate. That's been dead for.
Yeah.
You were at Shard 42. How embarrassing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still TBD, right? Like, and like, I'm not part of like, you know, core or foundation. So like, I am not as close to like the like deep work that's going on right now. But like, I think that's the fear, is that you got to go to like Shard 42 where like you're a loser, you know?
I thought it had changed so that you have data shards, but everything, like you go with like a ZK-Rollup centric scaling solution. But yeah, I mean, who knows?
But if you have data in different places, like my Compound balance is over here, right? My DAI CDP is over here. Like that's.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about the EVM clones, did you see Ledger's face? He was like cringing for his avalanche bags. He was like, please be kind. Please don't say it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, at least Avalanche does.
Zero. It's fine.
At least they do unique things.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. And do you back like a ZK rollup future? Because you've got like DYDX or whatever it's called now. And that's running on basically on ZK-Rollups, right? I think it's Starkware. And they're doing, I don't know how many transactions per minute or day or second or whatever. It seems to be going very well, but like, then it's like simple swaps, isn't it? It's like very simple. It's not fully EVM compatible. Do you back this? Do you think it's like just maybe like 10 years away? Do you think we can get it in the next 3?
Well, I mean, that's working today, and that's really cool. Like, I do think like a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush in a lot of cases. Like the fact that like,
I don't know what that means. A bird in the what is worth a bush of what?
It's an American saying, I guess.
it's American. Yeah. It means a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. I think it's a hunting term.
Yeah, you got to go hunt to get the 2 birds that are in the bush. But if you have 1 in the hand, you've already got like half the kill that you would get for all the effort to get 2.
Exactly. Like, so like a lot of people.
Worth than what? More than 1.
But they're in the bush. That's the whole point. You have to do work to go get them. You'd have
they
to
might fly
shoot
away.
them. You might accidentally shoot your dog. Like there's all kinds of things that could go wrong.
Right. 2 in the
like
bush. Right. They're like in an actual bush, you know? You might fly away.
I mean, British people hunt. I watched Downton Abbey, you know?
Yeah.
We don't like, it's not common British activity. Maybe it's like what the aristocracy or whatever do. But I also don't know if bird hunting is popular.
Sure it is.
Who hunts birds?
Lots of people.
The British do.
God, we got to get you
That's
an
not
album.
very nice.
Yeah, the British definitely do.
No, we just kill foxes.
No.
I guess so.
Maybe pheasants,
You're
actually.
you're just a city boy.
Yeah.
We're going to bring you to Alabama and go duck hunting.
Get 2 in the bush and you'll realize.
When are ducks ever in a bush?
Well, sometimes maybe pheasant hunting or something for that, but there's all kinds of different bird hunting that you can do.
We've derailed the conversation now because it was weird. We were talking about ZK rollups and DYDX being live.
Okay, so ZK is working right now. It's a bird in the hand, right? And F2 is like 2 in the bush. You know, we don't really know what's in that bush or if it's going to fly away or if we're actually going to bag it, right? We just hope, and it sounds even better, right? I guess that's where I was going with this. I mean, it is working. It is cool. I don't know, like, if it has, you know, all of the same, call it end state, like, composability that we have today. Like, DYDX is an unbelievable application. Not that I've ever used it because I live in the US. So
you got protected from the airdrop.
I feel so protected.
But, you know, I've watched videos of it and it's amazing. But like, you know, it's an amazing tool for an application, right? To like compute the data and the events inside an application, right? But it stands on its own. It really doesn't interact with any other systems. It's an absolutely amazing application. I think you could build like a ZK, NFT platform, or like, something like that. I don't know if you can build like a ZK Compound and Maker and Uniswap all interact.
Simple stuff, it works well. I saw a tweet earlier today that TikTok is launching on Ethereum or something. Where I've lost it. Yeah, I saw it earlier. Where is it?
Huge news? Like, shouldn't that be huge
I don't
news?
know, because who cares about TikTok? But
Zoomers, I guess.
here you go. So there's a ZK. You reminded me because there's a ZK-Rollup NFT platform called Immutable, and he tweeted today, TikTok is coming to Ethereum. We're launching TikTok Top Moments.
TikTok
bid on
Top.
iconic NFTs from internet creators. So it's like Top Shots, but for like people doing shit dances, I guess.
It's time to get our TikTok accounts.
Yeah, Les, you should have been on there ages ago, mate. You would have been a hit.
Yeah, it's too bad.
You could have called yourself Boomer Stars and it would have been ironic.
Yeah, I did one. Cobie published it on the internet without my permission.
Fucking hell.
That was very nice.
Yeah. All right, let's move on a little bit from Ethereum, and actually let's move on a little bit from Compound and talk a bit about Robot Ventures. You said you basically invest in anything that breathes. Is there a thesis that is a little bit more narrow?
I'll clarify. I said anything that breathes and has a heartbeat and like a good brain. Basically means that like we're investing in a lot of different projects. The website is woefully out of date. There's probably like another like 30 or 40 projects to add to it. But, over the last like 12 months, I think Tarun and I have probably invested in about 70 or so projects. Most of them are DeFi. Not all of them are Ethereum. A lot of them are in other ecosystems, whether it's Solana or Avalanche. And like we sort of like are really just trying to go to where the founders and entrepreneurs are building and what they're building. So like, when we started investing like a year or two ago, like a lot of it was like just DeFi on Ethereum because that's what people wanted to build. That's what people were researching. And that's what we were investing in. And over time, it's like we're sort of dabbling in everything, whatever, like, we try to take a cross section of like the entire crypto early stage ecosystem and just invest in the whole cross section, like index it all basically. And do it in a way where it's like really low friction and low diligence for founders. Cause I know how annoying investors are. They can suck. What we try to do is be like investors that suck, not at all. Where we try to be extremely easy, both on the investment side, the communication side. We try to like help if people want help, but otherwise just get completely out of the way. Oftentimes I'm like the 2 a.m. phone call for people, and Tarun's the white paper, reader and like, optimizer. He finds like crazy economic flaws and things, and helps teams improve them. But for the most part, we're just like, is it a good team? Are they working on something interesting? Like, let's get in it and like just see where it goes and not bug them. And, we invest in a lot. It's more than I thought we'd be investing in, to be honest, because it's not our full-time jobs at all. Like, we don't have an investment analyst. We're not like, we've never written like an outbound email. We're not like, like doing the things that like VCs do. It's mostly like us hanging around like every Discord on the planet. And like when founders are like, raising capital, they sometimes remember that we exist and like reach out to us. And I love it. I mean, to be honest, I've been investing for a couple of years, besides the monetary aspect, and you really, as a private market investor in crypto, you really can't have lost money the last couple of years. But like, besides the monetary side of it, I actually think there's more value just out of like interacting with tons of founders, just getting all the updates, like learning from all of them a little bit, just like hearing what's working, hearing what's not working, and then being able to channel that back into Compound in one way or another, just like with a little bit of knowledge. Cause like there's so much happening in crypto that like it's physically impossible for anyone to pay attention to all of it or even to like get updates on all of it. Like the signal to noise ratio is insane. And so like by being an investor in like 70 projects, it like hones the mind to be like, okay, pay attention to these 70 get like updates, like ask questions here and there, help out when they need help. But like, it's the only thing that keeps like a lot of different things top of mind. And I think the best part is just like the leveling up that like I'm able to help other founders with, and like they channel back to me of like helping me like not make like, stupid decisions, because I've like seen things that have worked and not worked in a lot of different places.
How do you make decisions on the structure for deals, or do you have any preferences? Like on your website, you've got some stuff that look like they're probably token related deals, some that are maybe liquid, like stuff that's already been out for a while and you're just kind of tacking on to help the team take some off, and then others that look like they're equity only deals. Like, do you care, or is it mostly about, are you invested in the right people?
Yeah. So, earlier in the process, in general, we're not leading rounds. So we're not like setting the terms. Oftentimes what we're doing is, someone else is leading a round and bringing us in, whether it's the founder or like the lead investor. And it's really not up to us what the structure is. We're basically just saying like, oh, you want to do X? Great. Like, fine by us, right? Like, we're not going to argue on the valuation. We're not going to like worry about the terms. Like we are as low friction as it gets. There's cases where we do lead rounds, oftentimes because like we're finding something like really early, like we're like actively working with them on the white paper, like we're like trying to understand the economics of it. We're like, oh, you don't have a lead investor yet? Great, we'll step up and like offer to lead a round. And in those cases, we are like writing the terms and we're saying like, okay, like what's the right structure? My preference oftentimes, like as an investor, is to like do what I know. I know what Compound did. Like Compound raised money in the form of like safes and equity. And then only when there was like a protocol that was like up and running did it create a token. And so, what I tell other founders and like what I try to invest in, and this is just what I know, is start off with like an equity-based business. Don't worry about a token too soon. Like if there is one and it makes sense, great. If not, don't worry about it. Like, and your thinking changes. Like oftentimes teams early on think we have to have a token, and then they think, why would we have a token? And then they say, we have to have a token. And then they say, do we? Right? So, you get a lot of flexibility with just having like a traditional cap table of raising equity, having investors. All of those investors are accredited. You're not like violating any laws. It's very simple. Like every investor on earth knows how to invest into a Delaware C company. And then later, if you want to move into like the token world, great. But like my preference is always like start off without worrying about a token. Just raise some equity, and then like just you're sharing your destiny with other people, and then you'll decide collectively what makes sense or what doesn't. But, as few handcuffs on the founder as possible. If you start off too soon with like, there's going to be a token and this is how much the investors get and like blah, 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 like founders like feel like metaphorical handcuffs that they have to do something a certain way or go in a certain direction. And I don't think a founder should ever like feel limited in like their sort of map of the market and where they want to go.
I got two questions in follow-up about this. The first one's maybe easy, but if you and Tarun don't agree, who wins? Well, if you want to invest and he's like, this is the worst idea I've ever heard, and then he says something like that looks like his tweets, and you're like, I just don't know what that means, and then you have an argument about it, who wins?
Yeah, in general, if one of us says no, we don't do it. But we're both easy to convince. So like if Tarun's really excited about something, like his brain is bigger than mine. Like I probably don't see it. Like if he's like, these guys are the best developers in the world, like we have to do this, I'm like, great. Like, you know what you're talking about, like fine by me. If I meet with a team and I'm like, oh my God, like, this founder's amazing. Like he's going to like run through walls. I have no idea what his idea is, but like, he's going to figure it out or she's going to figure it out. It's like, Tarun will say, great. Like you have a good hunch for like founders, and like, we generally don't say no too often, but like, there'll be times where like Tarun will like send me something like, oh, this is like kind of interesting. I'm like, I don't know. That one's generic. Like, let's not.
Yeah, fair enough. My second question is like, what's the exit plan, right? Because you get a lot of, on the thing, Ledger pulled it up, I had a little look. There's some stuff that appears to be liquid already or has liquid markets for it. I don't know if your exact investment itself is liquid. How, like in crypto, where there are relatively public markets pretty early, you sort of have to consistently decide not to sell, right? You make a difficult decision to invest in something. You make a hard choice. Okay, we're going to back these people for, 4 to whatever amount of years. And then you have this market and you're like, you can look at it all the time. There's a price, which is different to like previous private equity because maybe you can sell in secondary sales when another round happens, but otherwise you're just like locked up for 10 years or something. So what is the exit plan? Do you like just leave this shit forever and go, all right, well, in 15 years, we'll see how we did? Or do you actively rebalance and manage it, I guess, a bit more like a fund?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll be radically transparent. So in general, one of the things that we do is, one, we're like ultra respectful of like teams and lockups. If someone's like, there's a 2-year lockup, even if you get the tokens early, we're like, you don't touch them. Because I know a lot of investors who don't abide by those ethics. But the second thing is that if something is liquid and it's marked up like 4 to 10x or more, what we do is we try to sell like a quarter of the position to have fresh capital to invest into new projects. Because we're not operating with like a huge amount of cash just like sitting there. Like oftentimes like we are using the portfolio as the fuel to be able to invest into new projects. And so only things that are like marked up a huge amount will we take out like probably about a quarter of a position so that we can make an entirely new investment. Sometimes it's like, great, we can make 1 new investment with that. Or sometimes it's like we can make 8 new investments from that because it's done so well. But in general, we try to like keep most of the positions forever and just see where it goes.
That makes sense. And is this like your own money, you and Tarun's money together? Did you raise capital to do this? How does it work?
It's both and all of the above. So it's a fund and it has our money in it. It has LP dollars from other VCs. So like Paradigm, the fund is an investor, Galaxy's an investor, some of the Andreessen partners are investors. And we have a couple other like founders and angels that are, have their own money in. But, it's kind of like a blend of all of it. And we all just sort of deploy it together.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Any questions, Ledge?
I mean, I think I have a lot, but
fire away. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm interested in is how do you kind of graduate from this huge grind of we have no idea if this protocol is going to work to we think this protocol is actually working pretty well, and now like I need to be here to build the team or like the community or support things when like emergency situations happen or whatever. But how do you give yourself permission to step back at times, like and rest up a bit as a person that's put all of your heart and all of your energy into this for years?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, I think the ultimate goal is to build something so strong that you can step back permanently. Because like, I actually think that like we're building in crypto, and the way that something becomes like undefeatable is when it's like rigid as hell, when it doesn't need someone like me, right? When it just like is going to operate forever, right? Like, I'm not a Bitcoin like maxi, but like I do think that like the historical precedent of Bitcoin is extremely strong. And like you want a system to like be as sound as Bitcoin. Like you want a protocol to be as rigid as Bitcoin. You want like everyone to know that like nobody can mess it up. And it's going to be there in like 100 years. And like, yeah, I'm sure even Bitcoin has some issues with its economics in 100 years. But like, that's, I think the goal is that like nobody's that important that they're like necessary for it to function. Satoshi's not important enough, to Bitcoin that he's necessary for it to function or like survive. And so I actually think that the best systems are ones that don't need any like person there anymore. So the goal is to get to being able to step back entirely for the good of the system. But getting there is extremely hard. It's the likelihood that you create something and it comes out of the gate and works and grows and is Bitcoin is like incredibly small. Things like Compound, had to evolve through multiple iterations. When we launched version 1 of Compound, it was like August 2018. Nobody used it. It does roughly what Compound does today, but the market was too early. It wasn't good enough. This is before stable coins were a thing. It didn't really even have stable coins. It was like, if we stopped then, it wouldn't have like grown and blossomed to be like something like a Bitcoin. It would have just like, been forgotten into the dustbin of history. And so clearly at that juncture, it was like, well, shit, like we have to like keep going. Like, we don't know when this is going to work, but we're not there yet. And we had to like reinvent the system. We redesigned it so that it could be more composable. We didn't realize how important composability was, I think, even at the time. But pretty much all of the changes from version 1 to version 2 were composability. The entire idea of C tokens, which is like receipts that are programmable, came into that. Like now it's like, yeah, Uniswap is out P tokens and Compound has C tokens and everything on Earth has like tokens. That's just like, shortcuts to composability so that like all these protocols can talk to each other more easily. But like that was a game changer in terms of getting adoption. And, even after like V2, it's like, well, we could have stopped, but, are we truly there yet? Right. And I still think the answer is no. And I think like it requires slightly different work. Like, I think it's like, okay, the things we do are like the things that a decentralized community can't do. A decentralized community can't build a fiat on and off ramp of like institutional, like grade quality to a protocol. Like, I don't think a decentralized community can launch a mobile app, to be honest. Yep. So like, I think like that's something that like you just can't expect the community to do. And then it's like, well, what else can't like a decentralized community do yet? And it's like launch novel systems like Gateway, which is like an L1 solution. I don't think you can do that with like a distributed and decentralized team to start. I think you can maintain it, you can run nodes, you can grow it, you can get there, but like it requires this like oomph. And so maybe like, I hope like maybe in a year I can just like fully retire, but like even then I still think it'd be like, well, no, like you still have to like,
if you retire and Compound goes parabolically upwards, will you be offended? It's like the market reacted positively to this news.
You still got bags, man.
Yeah, I'd be thrilled,
So you mentioned, I really liked what you just said, by the way. I think it, I like totally agree with a bunch of it. You were talking a little bit about Bitcoin before and talking about how you're not a Bitcoin maxi, but you like this idea of there's this thing and it's stable and it doesn't change and it's simple. I got to ask you maybe a controversial question. It's like, how do you feel about Ethereum's monetary policy and the lack of predictability in Ethereum's monetary policy, where we've had EIP 1559? What if we have EIP 15592 while I'm on a gap year? It's like I'm partying for a year and I come back and they made the monetary policy way worse and now I'm broke. And this idea that Bitcoin is something very simple that you can just sort of set, forget, you know how it works. Maybe it will have economic policy problems in 100 years, but they're not any in the short term. You can just ignore it. Whereas Ethereum, it feels a little bit like you've got to pay attention every week because something's going to change. You might get rugged by some like, I want to say central planners or decentralized planners or whatever. I also need to go get a drink, but I can hear you in my headphones. So I'd love to hear your answer. Like, how do you feel like philosophically about EIP 1559 and Ethereum's monetary policy?
Yeah. So first off, I do think that Ethereum is an incredibly complicated, protocol. It's not Bitcoin. There's so much happening, with 1559, it gets introduced and like almost everything lightly breaks in terms of the user experience of the blockchain. So like MetaMask, like everyone has issues with it, right? Like
Disaster.
Ledger, hardware wallets, not the person, has horrible issues like with 1559.
Also the
like,
person.
Yeah, exactly. Like these changes disseminate out and are just like incredibly complex, right? We haven't even started on like the economics of 1559. And like most people don't even know how much gas gets burned. Like the best, like all the gas trackers are no longer even correct, right? Like, gasnow.org used to be the greatest thing on earth. And now it's like, like, no, you got to use the block native gas tracker, it's just a much more complicated system. That being said, I don't think the economics of it changed that much. The inflation schedule of Ethereum has changed moderately, okay, where it's like, oh, we went from, you know, what, a couple percent a year to less percent a year. It's not negative, right?
No, not negative yet, but I guess it would be if proof of stake or if proof of work goes away, then it may be net negative at current gas rate or gas burning rates.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, it changed, but like, I think it's overstated how much it changed, right? I think the Ethereum community really likes to emphasize like, oh, we're burning so much ETH. It's like, yeah, do you know how much, you know, a couple percent a year in inflation is on like, you know, 120 million ETH? It's a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a lot of dollar value. The headlines are crazy, right? But in terms of the actual impact, it's not like that meaningful. Like, it's not like an order of magnitude different, right? It's a little better. And so the question is like, can you like go away on vacation for a year and like, you know, get rugged? I think the answer is actually no. I think the protocol hasn't changed that much. The economics of it haven't changed that much. You know, it took a huge amount of agreement, you know, between developers and miners and everyone to bring this change forward. You know, I don't think you can get rugged in like the middle of the night or if you go on vacation, have the system like massively change underneath your feet. Yes, it did change. And yes, it's not like completely programmatic in how it changed, but there's enough social contract and expectation built in and agreement and sign off that's required between miners and like, you know, the core developers and everyone involved that, you know, it's not, you know, gonna massively change. I think Bitcoiners are so used to like absolute programmability and like, you know, algorithmic determination that they're like, you know, this is binary. It's either 100% deterministic or it's not deterministic at all. And I think that's a really false paradox. Like, I think it's like, you can have like a mostly deterministic, you know, system.
That's a good Maxi anger voice. I liked it.
Yeah.
I can imagine Udi making that voice when he gets really worked up.
There's a few people in my mind.
Udi's.
Do you want to say who they are? Yeah. We need to know who they are. Who are you impersonating?
You know, in my mind, the Maxi, when I hear a Maxi talk about like Bitcoin, it's typically either Dan Held or Pomp. When they're like talking about like, you know, like this is how Bitcoin works. It's like, you know how many Bitcoin there's gonna be, you know?
I like sometimes Dan Held just tweets the most obvious fucking shit, and I look at it, it's got like 10,000 retweets on it. The other day he said Bitcoin is better than gold, and it had like 10,000 retweets, like 50,000 likes, and I was like, who are these people that are like engaging with this? They're like, see that, and they're like, yeah, retweet.
his name is so perfect to be a Bitcoin maximalist.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah,
he really would have had to screw up to have failed the whole like Bitcoin maxi like character with that name.
Yeah, no, like you can't like write it better for central casting. Like, it's just
yeah. So Ultrasound Money estimates that the simulation being on Ethereum would hit about negative 2% issuance, and you know, with proof of somebody's on the way in. With proof of work, it's at like 5.4. Cobie, am I supposed to accept this person wants to come in? No.
I don't see them.
Okay, somebody wanted to join our call.
What was their name?
Unverified. We could have just pressed yes and see what happens.
No. Let's not invite them in.
But yeah, I mean, Ethereum's already burned 400,000 ETH, and it makes me think that like squirrely or not in terms of monetary policy for the future, that's a lot of ETH to burn. And considering ETH's performance when it was quite inflationary over the past however many years, it's going to make some fireworks style dynamics in my mind in the future that I'm not totally convinced are priced in, but you know.
What if the dude that was trying to get in was Dan Held? He's like, I just heard what you said about me.
Let him in.
Udi sent him the link.
All right, I got a question from someone on Twitter earlier. They said you got to ask Rob about this. So there is speculation in the crypto community that you have an alt account called Perugia V. Can you confirm or deny this? And before you confirm or deny, I got sent a link to this weird thread where
send it to me?
people are like showing, well, when Perugia joined, the first 3 people they followed was Lava Labs, then it was you, and they bought an alien, and then they followed some like on the person that so it was you, Lava Labs, and the person they bought the alien from. And it's in a response to you being like, I'm shocked no one has guessed my alt account yet. Is this a big outing? Can you tell us the truth now?
I am not Perugia.
Fuck!
Seems like it seems too easy based on your description there.
I know. No, I think they just followed me because I like CryptoPunks.
Can you tell me about the Wild White sweep? When like every DeFi founder bought Wild White and nobody told me about it, because that would have been a nice like 50 ETH or so profit.
I can. I'm happy to tell you all about the Wild White. So I noticed that Kane changed his profile pic to a Wild White CryptoPunk, and I was like, damn, that is a good looking CryptoPunk. I was like, why don't I have a Wild White CryptoPunk, you know? And so I think I like sold a CryptoPunk. And by the way, like what's funny is like, you know, for me, it's like I like to sell a CryptoPunk to buy a CryptoPunk, and like it's a light game of trading to like get better and better punks over time without spending more ETH. Like I do it for fun, but I was like, I got to get a white CryptoPunk, and I showed up to dinner. I was having dinner with Kane and Hayden, and I showed up to dinner with Kane, and I was like, check it out, I got a white hair CryptoPunk, and I'm changing my avatar to it on Twitter right now. I was like, you know, fist bump, you know. And he was like, yes, like intelligent decision. Those are the best CryptoPunks.
Intelligent decision.
You chose wisely. And Eden was like, CryptoPunks, no, Unisocks. That's the only NFT that matters. Like, you guys are crazy. Like, you know, why do you want CryptoPunks when you can have socks? And Kane and I just like, you know, lambasted him. We're like, come on, Hayden. Like, we goaded him into it. We bullied him into getting it. So we're like, you have to buy a white hair CryptoPunk right now. And he's like, no. Like, you know, I can't do that. Like, it's so expensive. I said, if you have enough crypto on your phone to buy a CryptoPunk, while we're sitting at dinner, like, you have to do it. Like, you know, this is not a question, like, you're required by like crypto law to buy a white hair CryptoPunk. And so he does. He's like, well, which one do I buy? And we're like, whichever one speaks to you. Like, that one has nerd glasses. It's cool. Like, get the nerd glasses, white hair punk. So he gets it. And then, you know, he changes his profile pic on Twitter to a white hair punk. And people thought that there was like, you know,
the cabal,
some like master plan or some collusion or something. Did they sweep all of the CryptoPunks first and like hoard the supply? And now they're like gaming the market. It's like, no, like, Kane had one, I got one, and Hayden got one.
It was peer pressure at dinner.
And peer pressure, like, we all thought they were cool, and then like everyone else went out and started buying white hair CryptoPunks, and you know.
I mean, they are the elite CryptoPunks. They are
very elite.
Someone in the chat just said, did you know one of the guys who claimed $27 million in comp yesterday is now sweeping the punks floor?
No, they are.
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's
I hope
being
they're watching
reinvested
this.
at least.
I hope they're watching.
I don't know if I approve. I think it would have been much better if they took that comp and sent it back to the community.
Maybe they'll turn it into a temporary fund. They'll trade it up to like 150 million, and then they'll send the comp back.
You know what? If they can trade that comp into a bigger stockpile and then give back the original amount, everyone's a winner. So.
All right. Well, if I can claim some, that's what I'm going to do then. I'm going to see if I can trade it up and then return the original. I don't think I have any, though. It's not my style. So.
Wait. So who is your alt account? Is it OXTuber?
I'm not going to discuss any
alt accounts.
I say zero.
Next topic.
Is it really is it a relief though to have an alt account and just be able to be like say whatever you want?
Yes, although most of my tweets are just like what I want to say anyway. Like I try not to put too much of a filter on it. Like if I'm just like, you know, out having a beer with a friend and I'm like, you know, we're talking about something, I'll say like, oh, that would make like a fun tweet, and I'll just like, you know, get on there.
That's how I started the Cobie account. It's like I wanted a place to just say what I wanted to say. But now I can't do it because it's like, now it's too big.
Yeah, Cobie has an alt account too, I think, but nobody.
Yeah, my alt account's my real account. My alt account is my name.
Yeah, Jordan Fish is the alt for sure.
Yeah, that's my alt account. That's where I got to tweet the stuff that Cobie people won't like.
I have another question about like strategy in DeFi, but before I get to that, I also want to raise concerns that Hayden Adams thinks that a CryptoPunk's too expensive. Like, he must have as much money as just about anybody in crypto.
Yeah, not just that, not how much money he has. The socks are like $100,000.
Yeah, he has like 100 pairs of socks or whatever. But yeah, I mean, everyone views NFTs differently. Like, and it's so irrational because like there's people who'll be like $100 on a dinner, like you're insane. But it's like, oh, like let me just like toss some crypto, like it's no big deal. And you have other people who are like, that NFT is like so expensive, like, you know, oh, but I'll trade this random like, you know, perp of like crazy size, like it's like nothing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like everyone's mentality is a little bit different. And like some people, even if they have like a ton of wealth, are just like, CryptoPunks are so expensive. Like, no way.
Yeah.
It's because Lava Labs show you the price in dollars.
Yeah,
you don't need. You
that.
never need to see that. You only need
that.
to see the ETH price, and you can pretend that it's not as expensive as it is. When they show you it in dollars, that's why Nifty Gateway is annoying as well, because they show you the dollar price. And you're like, that's not what I want to see right now. I'm trying to like make a purchase that I'll later regret, and you're stopping me.
The people that I find the most incredible with CryptoPunks are the people that just minted, and then their first sale ever is for this incredible markup, and it's like, oh yeah, I sold it for $1 million or something 4 years later. I
minted a bunch. So I'm the idiot in the room. So I actually minted, I think it was like 26 CryptoPunks, and this was 2017. I found out about CryptoPunks because I read an article on Mashable.com talking about. So this is how late to the game I was. But like NFTs didn't sell out in 5 minutes back then, right? Even when they were like gas only claim. Nobody wanted to claim all the CryptoPunks. And I sat down with like my roommate and like we were like claiming some CryptoPunks using Mist, like the old like, wallet, which was like horrible, right? And we're claiming CryptoPunks one at a time, just pressing the button. And like every time it's like, you know, you're spending like, you know, a little bit of like G-Way, you know?
$3.
And
not even.
After like 26 punks, I was like, I'm tired of clicking. I've spent like $14 on gas. Like, no way. Like for art, I've spent $14. Like I'm going to stop at 26. And over the next couple of years, I was like, you know, even though I took like my crypto portfolio seriously, I was like, oh, CryptoPunks are just art. It's fun. It's a joke. I listed them for like, I sold a bunch for half an app. I sold a bunch for like an app. Last Christmas, I gave away 15, pretty much the rest of my collection to like,
my gosh,
like Compound Labs employees. I just like gave them away. So I'm like, oh, they're only worth like, you know, $5,000 each. It's a crazy lavish gift. Have fun, you know, like, and I gave away 15. And then
that's $300,000.
As soon as I gave them away, it was like bull market and punks, you know, like let them rip, you know, ever since. And I don't regret any of it, you know, like part of like the fun of NFTs is like, if everybody hoarded their punks, they'd be valueless, right?
Yeah.
If all the people that claimed them refused to sell them, you know, they wouldn't be what they are today. And so, you know, no regrets. I could have had a lot more punks that I claimed for $14 worth of gas, but whatever.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I like that because it's like if you have one Bitcoin, it's worth, you know, $43,000, whatever it is today. But if you have 21 million Bitcoin, it's worth zero. It's like if you're the one that owns all the Bitcoin, they're not worth anything anymore.
Yeah.
I pulled the laziness move with the 1-inch airdrop because after the uni one, I was like, 1-inch is definitely going to do something for, I think it was Mooniswap at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to do this on 100 wallets. And then I did a handful and got lazy. Like they all got the airdrop. It was worth a decent chunk of money, I guess. And I just was like, wait, why didn't I do that on 100 wallets? Like I didn't want to spend another 30 minutes of work for $200,000 or whatever that would have been worth on 100 wallets. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I know people who made like 100 different DYDX accounts, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I made
that was like pretty pricey airdrop as well. That's done well, hasn't it?
But they didn't do anything for people that did it on layer 1, because I did the like trade thing on the layer 1 DYDX like forever ago at the same time.
You're American.
I know, but I mean, even if I, but did they have? I don't think this is pre-VPN. This is pre-VPN, Cobie. Don't put me in a hole here. This is pre-VPN. I didn't VPN for that.
Oh, I won DYDX. I was confused. I was just using
definitely something else. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure the airdrop we got protected from was for like layer 2 only for DYDX. So.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. If you went through all that effort, like you could have done on one end, like many of the other airdrops, I think you could have made like 6 figures in airdrop money this year, right? Like,
you could have made 7. Like, there have been some crazy airdrops for early users.
Yeah. Anyway, Cobie, you got me off my guard here.
Look, it was pre-VPN, whatever that means. It was pre-VPN. Yeah. No one was doing anything illegal.
Pre-VPN. I'm sticking to it. So my last question about protocol stuff was when you brought up a mobile phone that couldn't be a decentralized app, and also kind of you talked earlier about Compound being a relatively, narrow scope product. Sushi's kind of gone the other way. A bunch of others have gone the other way, where you kind of see this future where they're an all-in-one DeFi application. And my question for you is, do you think the narrow applications that communicate really well is more likely the future, or do you think all of these like popular names with network effects, Compound and Aave and Uniswap and Sushi, will start looking a lot more like one another, offering very similar suites of products, but it's kind of like the banks, you choose which one you want to have a relationship with?
I think the answer is both, and I think the answer is both because of composability. So I think you have this opportunity for protocols to do multiple things, but also not do certain things at all, right? Like you might have like a Compound that's like very narrow, and it might also, outsource, let's say, some of its trading to Uniswap, right? And make a new product that does both. Because you don't have to build everything. Like even if you're competing and trying to offer everything, like even in the craziest end state where it's just brands, right? There's a brand called Sushi, there's a brand called Compound, there's a brand called Aave, there's a brand called Uniswap, and they're all just like doing everything. Even then, they still don't have to like actually have built everything. And so I kind of think that over time, like you'll have like DeFi brands that do more, and some of it they'll like in-house, like Sushi like built everything, right? Right now is building everything, right? But like I think you'll see like things in the middle as well that like they're like, oh yeah, like Compound has like a margin trading product, but like it uses Sushi, So I don't know. It's also too early to tell. I think like some people are gonna like go the other direction where they scale like vertically, and I think this is sort of where Compound is going, which is Compound Labs is building like a fiat on and off ramp to a protocol. Well, the community runs the protocol. And it's more of like a vertical integration, like targeting a different user group that doesn't use DeFi today at all, right? And so I think like you will have this like horizontal stretching, but also this like vertical growth. And protocols and DeFi things and teams and communities will all be very like tactical about where they're going. And some of it will be accidental and some of it will be, good and bad and all these things. But like in terms of like a 2x2 map, you'll have people occupying very different zones. Right now, Compound is very like narrow and starting to go tall.
Yeah.
Sushi is like very like short and going very wide. Like MakerDAO is like
like what? Cobie?
Just like Gainsey. I got two sort of final questions, and Ledger, I don't know if you have more, and they're like,
no, I'm done. We've had him on for like ages, and I don't want.
Yeah, we're almost at 2 hours or something. So, yeah. But I got two final questions, and one is to you as an investor, and maybe as like the robot founder, or maybe just as a angel investor, not really sure. But what are the main narratives or problems that you're looking for people to find solutions for? Like, what areas are you looking to invest in, and are you excited about in the future, the near future, or like what problems exist where you're like, I wish someone would solve that, I would give them money to solve that, I'd solve it if I didn't have 10 jobs already and the opera and chess to go to.
So I see like two zones that I'm personally interested in right now. And I think my answer in 9 months might be different, but the areas that I'm actually excited about right now are, one, in NFTs, but not like, oh, there's like a piece of art and it's an NFT and someone can like buy it and sell it. I don't find that very interesting, but it's in what can NFTs be besides being like an IPFS hash that points to an image file. Because I actually think that NFTs have the opportunity to really grow outside of the blockchain in a way that fungible tokens don't, and to start to like interact with the real world in a way that I think most of crypto doesn't at all. So like NFTs, like entitling you to offline rights or opportunities, whether it's like royalties or experiences or like membership or like whatever it is. Like I'm actually really excited about the sort of non-art NFT use cases. I'm also really excited about, like, coupled with that, NFT finance. So the first 3 years of DeFi was like pretty much exclusively like finance with fungible assets. How do you trade tokens? How do you borrow tokens? How do you create derivatives and stuff on tokens? And like pretty much all of the DeFi effort so far has really been on fungible assets. I actually think there's a huge zone of opportunity for doing finance with non-fungible assets, whether it's how do you trade not like unique things, how do you borrow against unique things, how do you do like complex derivatives on unique things. This space is still very underexplored, and I think it's really exciting. So that's like the NFT stuff that I'm excited about. The second is actually like around user experience. I think the user experience of blockchain in general is just horrible. I'm embarrassed that like even myself, I'm like struggling with like EIP 1559 and MetaMask and Ledger. It's like this should embarrass everybody. That the user experience of all of this stuff is just so bad. It's not set up for like the majority of people. It's not set up for normies. It's like no one can use this stuff besides like us like nerds and freaks, okay? Like it's just not ready for everybody. And so anyone that's working on like actual user experience improvements to how people interact with crypto, I think is like one of the most valuable and one of the least targeted zones of opportunity. And so this means wallets, this means products that like abstract away crypto. Like Compound Treasury is one of the reasons I love it so much, is because like it abstracts it away. So like institutions don't even know they're using DeFi, but they are. Like anything that makes the user experience less horrific, I think is a really big opportunity. And there've been a lot of experiments, but like there needs to be 10 times as many experiments. So I love user experience improvements.
Love that.
Yeah. Someone in chat said shout out Zapper because that's got great UX. I do think Zapper has got pretty good UX. One of my least favorite UX, like I always say that Ethereum's got like quite bad user experience, and like I think ENS has actually made a decent improvement on that for a lot of people, because as soon as everyone that you know has an ENS, you're just like, okay, I don't stress about like typing the wrong shit anymore. But Avalanche's user experience is like you got to go from the P chain to the X chain back to the C chain. You got to like, what is going on? What is going on? Maybe this is just the future we all, and like Arbitrum with your like fucking lockup, you can't withdraw for however long it is, and instead you've got to use this bridge where you got to give like 0.3% to the person who's bridging in for you and stuff. My God. So I think that is smart. Yeah. Like you were a long way away from, consumer products like your Instagram or your whatever.
Right. But there's going to be middle solutions as well. Like someone's going to build like a finance or DeFi application that makes waiting on Arbitrum invisible and not suck, or like moving between Avalanche like zones not suck. And like even that's like a UX improvement that I think has like an incredible importance, because it's not going to change at like the protocol layer one. It's only going to change above that.
It's what it looks like. I mean, that's the same thing with the web. Like most people can't describe an IP address, but they don't have to know it. They just have to know a domain name. Yeah,
they have to open up like Uber Eats and get a burrito,
Yeah.
That makes sense. The other question I wanted to ask is, if you're a person that's like watching this and, you're maybe new to crypto, maybe you've been in it for a while, or maybe you're just ready to go like sort of full time in crypto. Like how does Compound hire? Like A, Compound Labs, and B, Compound as a protocol. Like how does it hire people? And like a sort of follow-up question to this, like how would you, like where would you be looking for roles now? Like how would you go full-time in crypto if you were starting today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Compound protocol actually hires through a grants process at this point. It's a little bit disorganized, but it's not too bad. There's RFPs of opportunities to build things. There's roles for contributors, whether it's on development or like just assisting the community. We have someone who joined the protocol recently just as like a coordinator, essentially. And there's any opportunity you create. So like anyone who's passionate and just like entering the space and is like completely jacked up about like a protocol like Compound, you can literally create a role for yourself and the community will be like, sounds like you need like a grant, like come work on the protocol full time, like, and like there are no rules, right? But it's like the same way someone gets a job like, that's really good. It's like there are no rules, you figure it out, right? There's lots of opportunities to work with the Compound protocol. Over time, it's going to become more like straightforward about like how you work for a protocol. But the whole idea of this sounded insane 2 years ago. But now you can work for a protocol. And in 2 years, when it's a very simple process, maybe everyone else will have taken the opportunities there. So figure out what it takes to work for a protocol. There's lots of opportunities. It's fantastic. Compound Labs is always hiring. We hire more traditional things. Like we hire software engineers and designers and like business people and like compliance people and like, lawyers and like, everything you can imagine. Marketing. We have a million opportunities, most of which aren't even listed on our website. Just like if you're extremely good at something and like you can prove it, just like DM me on Twitter or like fill out a job.
Shit posting count.
Yeah, shit post, use it all, as long as you're a real person behind it.
Our moderator Luke, OX4C75, whatever, he's looking for a job, so I'm going to get him to get in touch with you.
Nice.
He's got some stuff. I don't know if he can prove it.
That's good.
My final question, and I said I'd have two, and now I've gone with three. I'm sorry. My final question is like, what stuff are you like not excited for? It's like a flip of the first one, right? Like, what stuff do you find as like complete vapor or an embarrassment to the industry, or trends that you see happening where you just want to fucking dunk on them, but maybe you got to be nice because you're Rob from Compound and Robot?
Well, I guess if there's one category that fits into this, there's like a genre I call generic DeFi, and there's a lot of generic DeFi where they like, I think like it's like founders that just are like looking to launch a token and they figure out which buzzwords to package together for just long enough to like launch a token and hopefully like have someone sell it. Generic DeFi are like products that like don't need to exist. It's like oftentimes like it's clones, it's light modifications to things. You wouldn't believe how many pitches I see where they're like, it's this, and we changed this one thing. Hooray! Like we're genius.
The logo.
Yeah. Oh, it's like whatever, but like we changed some tiny nuance that like doesn't actually matter because like the first thing doesn't have like massive product market fit. So it's like, what do you like? And like they go out and they raise money because like it's an incredibly loose environment, and like everyone else is like, oh, what a genius for investing in, generic DeFi product 74, And it's like, there's nothing new there, right? But like, they're raising anyway. And like, they're going to launch a token and it's not going to be around in 3 years because the founders actually just don't give a shit. And the investors don't give a shit. And it's very reminiscent of 2017.
Yeah, I think that is right. I just like maybe worse than 2017 because in 2017 you knew they probably weren't going to build a flying car, whereas now you can actually be tricked into thinking, wait, this thing is actually maybe legitimate because they're doing this in a different way, and like no one really understands what they're doing. So maybe it's worse than 2017, but.
I do.
And also, like now, in 2017, you could at least buy at the same stage as everyone else. Now you only get to buy the top. After like the FDV goes to like 17 billion or whatever. So maybe it's worse. Maybe it's worse. Who knows?
I do think
that is all my questions. It's all my questions. I've run out of them, Ledger.
Nice.
I actually made a list for the first time ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Impressive. I'll get to the alpha in a second. I do think towards like what happens next in comparison to 2017 is when there's inevitable contraction in the market price wise. We saw this last time where projects still had a whole lot of money to build throughout the bear market, the serious ones that didn't get like super squeezed off of that. What we're going to see this time is more entities with more money that learned better lessons about like treasury management and stuff, and they're going to have enormous amounts of money to build throughout that process. And it's going to be really interesting to me, assuming I make it out alive on time before everything goes to zero. It's going to be really interesting to me, like to see what is built and what evolves, like those better user experiences that you talked about. Some of these products that are not like Me Too DeFi, and instead they're innovative and solve some of these really interesting problem sets.
So you think they're just going to do what EOS did, and their innovation is like how to entity hop the money around and eventually invest it in themselves or something?
Hopefully it is a little better than that path.
Yeah. The question I always ask, myself about other projects, and like the things I oftentimes ask other projects is like, is it going to be around in 5 years? Like, why or why not, right? And I think like by default, the answer is always no. When projects have a lot of money, the answer becomes more likely to be yes, but like, will the product be there in 5 years, right? Will anyone be using it? Like, why? Like, how are they going to get to like, this like resilient state where like it matters? And like, I think like most things don't matter, right? I think like the hardest job for like an investor, whether you're like venture investing or like trading in public assets or whatever, is just like trying to discern like what's going to be here, like, and what like actually has underlying value versus just like someone launched a token and it's all speculation just on the token. It doesn't mean that like the underlying thing has any merit.
Yeah. So the last thing we like to get out of guests is one piece of alpha before they go. Some bit of advice. Doesn't have to be financial advice, but something that might.
Ideally, it's not financial advice because none of us are trained financial advisors. Well, maybe you are, but you only for your LPs.
But something that might improve their life, make them a little smarter, a little wiser, maybe a little richer, but definitely gonna help them along the way. If there's a piece of alpha, a piece of advice that you have for our audience, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's really two pieces of advice. One is, I think crypto is more welcoming than you might think it is. And there's a lot of people out there that like are excited for you to be in their community, whether it's on Twitter or in Discord or in their GitHub or whatever, that like, you don't have to lurk. Like you can participate even if you don't think you can, but like you can. Almost every community or every project in crypto is excited to have you, as long as you're not just like a total trash talker and shit talker. Like you can get involved, and you shouldn't hesitate to do so. And second, I actually think that in general, just in terms of alpha, I think in crypto and these markets, I think there's more option sellers than option buyers. And I think that like most of the strategies are fundamentally short optionality. And I actually think that if you're able to properly delta hedge, you should probably be an option buyer, because most people are naturally short gamma, even though crypto is a crazy asset class. So I would say like buy gamma and hedge it and be around for a couple seasons. So don't just do it for a week. For a year.
We went this whole episode not talking about trading, and then he just like lifted his Gigabrain cap. It's like, let's talk Greeks. I freaking love it. But we're going to have to leave it there because we said we were done. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the audience. Appreciate y'all.
I thought gamma was what made the Hulk green.
What's that?
I thought gamma was what made the Hulk green. Is it something else?
Oh, man. Go to uponly.tv/FTX. Thank you to them for being our partners. You can track your portfolio, trade asset to asset directly on their mobile app, earn yield on your assets as well. Go to uponly.tv/FTX. Thank you for visiting us at thecursedpodcast.com. You can go there for all your show notes and ways to subscribe, everything else. Talk to you later.
Bye, mate.
Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.